So, as you know, we're here to have a spirited, we hope, debate on biofuels. And, a few years ago, I think you could say that there was a consensus that expanding biofuels was a good thing and would help us wean ourselves off fossil fuels. And most studies estimated that ethanol from corn or biodiesel from soybeans or rapeseed oil reduced greenhouse gases, at least to some extent. And essentially, if there was a way that scientists could master the art of engineering fast-growing grasses and turning them into ethanol efficiently, it would reduce greenhouse gases by a huge amount. And so Congress made the decision that in the Energy Bill of 2007, it would require 36 billion gallons of biofuels by 2020. As you might remember, this was a key cornerstone of President Bush's climate policy to expand ethanol. And of course, I think, as many people know on Capitol Hill, there's no surprise on how ethanol has a tremendous amount of support, particularly given, say, something called the Iowa caucuses. I covered the presidential campaign last year and was traveling with John McCain, one of the few presidential hopefuls who loves bashing ethanol constantly. So as you can imagine, there's quite a debate on that. But when Congress passed its energy bill 2 years ago, it didn't make a distinction between ethanol coming from food crops like corn and ones coming from cellulosic plants like switchgrass. They said, basically the distinction is whether ethanol, that's biofuels that are being used are coming from productive land or not. And so basically what they did is they said that, if crops are diverted to biofuels, that would be an issue because farmers elsewhere that actually would do something in which you would have conversion to forest or grassland to replace food, and there would be a balancing out. But these calculations of land use are something that people didn't really factor in, but there was actually a provision that was included in the energy bill that would look at kind of how different categories of biofuels reduce greenhouse gases by taking into account, either in the language of the law, significant indirect effects, such as land use change, and calculating the greenhouse gas effects EPA is looking at. And then this has been kind of a subject of a huge debate, because basically part of the question is this precise enough to be a good judge of biofuels? And in fact, there's been efforts to strip the Environmental Protection Agency of the authority to look at indirect land use effects. And the climate change bill passed this summer would bar EPA from looking at the international indirect land use change for 5 years. This was, again, a provision that was debated quite vociferously, but as you might recall, the Agricultural Committee was considered a pivotal point in terms of garnering votes for the bill. Colin Peterson, the chair of the Agricultural Committee in the House, was very upfront in saying he was concerned that any climate bill could hurt farmers in the United States, and that efforts needed to be taken in order to make sure that it was okay. So, basically, this is a debate that's happening both here at home and in Europe, and I think everyone at this point is really looking at biofuels in terms of how can they address what everyone recognizes as an issue, which is, our dependence on fossil fuels and how to transition, and the question of kind of what biofuels we use and how we produce them is really one of the key questions I think a lot of lawmakers are invested in and a lot of policymakers are looking at both on and off Capitol Hill. So we have two speakers who will provide different viewpoints on this. Bruce Dale is a professor of chemical engineering at Michigan State University. In 1996, he won the Charles G. Scott Award for contributions to the use of biotechnology to produce fuels, chemicals, and other industrial products from renewable plant resources. In 2001, he stepped down as chair to return full-time to teaching, and he led a National Research Council report titled Bio-Based Industrial Products, Research and Commercialization Priorities, which was published in May of 2000. I'd also like to point out that his kind of concern on this issue was formed by growing up in the copper mining town of Ruth in eastern Nevada, a lovely small community that became a ghost town when the mine ran out of ore. And so he's basically distrusted mining as a kind of an economic base for society ever since, and has been looking to alternatives since growing up there. Tim Searchinger is a research scholar and lecturer at Princeton University and a transatlantic fellow of the German Marshall Fund. He had an article in Science that was prepared jointly with economists and ecologists at the Iowa State and Woods Hole Research Center, which helped focus public attention on this and sparked quite a firestorm of controversy. I not only covered this, but have subsequently been lectured by any ethanol proponent when I'm on a plane, when I'm walking, hailing a cab. It's really one of those papers that has been a touchstone for controversy, and I'm sure we'll have some of that debate coming forward. So with that said, so Bruce is going to start off for how many minutes? Sometime 20 minutes?
20 minutes.
Okay.
25, 10, 10, 5.
Okay, like a chess match, we're gonna start. You go now, and please make the case for biofuels.